Taehyung didn't sleep that night. Even after he had been dismissed from the study, after Jungkook had turned his attention to business matters, the weight of their conversation clung to his skin like a ghost. His mind replayed Jungkook's words over and over. "I want you to want me." The audacity. The arrogance. The sheer certainty in Jungkook's voice. It unsettled Taehyung more than he cared to admit. He paced his chambers, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows against the walls. Every instinct in him screamed that he should escape, that he should find a way out of this marriage before it swallowed him whole. But what scared him more than Jungkook's possessive words, more than the deception and power games, was the way his body had responded. The way his breath had caught when Jungkook touched him. The way his skin burned where Jungkook's lips had brushed against his. Taehyung clenched his fists, disgusted with himself. He wasn't weak. He wasn't some love-struck fool. And yet, a knock on the door startled him. His heart leapt into his throat as the door creaked open. Jungkook stood there, dressed in nothing but a loose robe, his long hair slightly damp as if he had just bathed. His presence alone was enough to make the air shift, thick with tension. Still awake, Jungkook mused, stepping inside uninvited. He shut the door behind him, locking it with a quiet click. Taehyung took a step back. "What are you doing here?" Jungkook tilted his head, as if amused by the question. "It's our wedding night. Shouldn't I be with my husband?" Taehyung's pulse quickened. "We agreed." Jungkook cut him off with a soft chuckle. "We agreed to play our roles." He stepped closer, his dark eyes gleaming in the candlelight. "Tell me, Taehyung, is it still an act if you already want me?" Taehyung's breath hitched. "I don't." Jungkook reached for him, fingers skimming along Taehyung's wrist. The touch was deceptively gentle, a stark contrast to the dangerous glint in his gaze. "Liar!" Taehyung's body betrayed him again. His wrist twitched beneath Jungkook's touch, but he didn't pull away. He couldn't. Jungkook's smirk deepened. "I can feel your pulse racing," he murmured, voice laced with dark amusement. "Is it fear, Taehyung? Or is it something else?" Taehyung gritted his teeth. "Let go." Jungkook did. But instead of stepping away, he leaned in, his lips brushing dangerously close to Taehyung's ear. "You can fight me all you want," he whispered, voice smooth as silk. "But in the end, you'll be mine." Taehyung shuddered. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Jungkook pulled back, watching him for a long moment, as if savoring the way Taehyung trembled beneath his gaze. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the door, unlocking it with a lazy flick of his wrist. Just before stepping out, he glanced back over his shoulder. "Sleep well, my love." The door shut softly behind him, leaving Taehyung standing in the middle of the room, breathless, shaking, and utterly trapped. Taehyung did not sleep. Even after Jungkook left, his presence lingered in the air, his words echoing in the quiet. "You will be mine." The sheer audacity of it made Taehyung's blood boil. But underneath the anger, there was something far more dangerous clawing at him. A deep, unsettling awareness of Jungkook. Of the way his touch lingered. The way his voice curled around his name like a silken chain. Taehyung refused to be bound. Morning came too soon, the golden light creeping through the tall windows of his chamber. A soft knock on the door broke the silence. "My lord," a voice called from outside. "The Jian household has received a letter from your family. The master wishes to speak with you immediately." Taehyung's stomach tightened. His father. Had they finally discovered the truth? The study was grand, lined with dark wooden shelves and towering windows that bathed the room in daylight. Jungkook's father, Lord Jian, sat behind a heavy mahogany desk, his piercing gaze fixed on Taehyung as he entered. Jungkook was already there, lounging in a chair with an air of ease, his long fingers idly tracing the rim of his teacup. He barely acknowledged Taehyung's arrival, though there was a flicker of amusement in his gaze when the eyes met. Taehyung ignored him, turning to Lord Jian instead. "You summoned me." The older man pushed a sealed letter across the desk. "A message from your father." Taehyung hesitated before picking it up. The wax seal was unbroken, his father's crest pressed firmly into the red. He could feel Jungkook's gaze burning into him as he carefully peeled it open and scanned the contents. His breath caught. "Taehyung, my son, you must leave at once. The truth has been uncovered. Your sister's deception has been exposed, and the engagement was never meant to hold. The Giants cannot keep you bound by a contract that was made under false pretenses. Come home. We will annul this marriage. You are free." His fingers trembled slightly as he lowered a letter. His father knew. His family had found out the truth, and now, freedom. A way out. Taehyung's pulse pounded as he lifted his gaze to Lord Jian, who was watching him with a cold, calculating stare. "We will honor the annulment if that is what you wish," Lord Jian said smoothly. "But of course, that is a decision that falls to my son." Taehyung stiffened, turning sharply toward Jungkook, who had yet to react. The younger man simply sipped his tea, as if the entire conversation was nothing more than an idle morning discussion. Then, slowly, Jungkook set his cup down. "The engagement was false," Taehyung pressed, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "The marriage should never have happened. My family has requested my return. You have no reason to keep me here." Jungkook tilted his head, studying Taehyung with something unreadable in his dark eyes. "No reason," he repeated softly. Taehyung swallowed. "None." Jungkook exhaled a quiet laugh. Then, without looking at his father, he spoke. "The marriage stands." Taehyung's heart stopped. Lord Jian barely blinked. "Are you certain?" "Yes." It was final. Decisive. There was no hesitation, no moment of thought. Jungkook had no intention of letting him go. Taehyung felt the walls closing in, his chest tightening. "You can't." Jungkook stood, stepping closer. "I can." His voice was soft, but his next words were anything but. "And I will." Taehyung clenched his fists. "Why?" Jungkook leaned in, his breath coasting over Taehyung's ear. "Because you're mine." Taehyung. Something inside him snapped. Taehyung shoved Jungkook away, his breathing uneven. "I'm not your possession." Jungkook merely smirked, brushing off the rejection as if it meant nothing. "No," he said, eyes gleaming with something dark and unreadable. "You're not?" Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he reached out and traced a single finger down Taehyung's wrist, right over his racing pulse. "You're my husband." The words sent a shiver down Taehyung's spine. Jungkook stepped back, turning toward his father. "This discussion is over." Lord Jian said nothing, merely nodding in acknowledgement before rising from his chair. Taehyung stood frozen as the man left, the heavy doors clicking shut behind him. And then, they were alone. Jungkook exhaled a quiet sigh, as if this was nothing but a minor inconvenience. "You're upset?" Taehyung laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Upset. He turned to glare at Jungkook, fury burning in his veins. "You've just denied me my freedom." What do you expect me to be? Grateful. Jungkook's expression darkened, the teasing glint fading from his eyes. I expect you to understand, Taehyung. Understand what? Jungkook closed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbing Taehyung's chin between his fingers, forcing their gazes to meet. His grip wasn't painful, but it was firm, unyielding. Understand that I'm not letting you go. His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of an unbreakable vow. Not now. Not ever. Taehyung's breath hitched. Jungkook held his gaze for a moment longer before releasing him. You can fight me all you want, he murmured. But the outcome won't change. Taehyung's hands trembled at his sides, rage and something far more dangerous twisting in his chest. Then you leave me no choice, he whispered. Jungkook's lips curled. Do you plan to run, my love? Taehyung met his gaze with unwavering determination. Watch me, Jungkook chuckled. I look forward to it. Taehyung turned on his heel and stormed out, his mind already racing with escape plans. But deep down, in the part of himself he refused to acknowledge, he knew the truth. Jungkook wasn't just going to let him go. And worse, some part of him wasn't sure if he even wanted to. Taehyung ran. The corridors of the Jian estate were vast, lined with towering pillars and moonlit archways, but he had studied them well. He knew which paths the guards patrolled, which doors led to hidden exits. The letter from his father had given him a chance, his only chance, to break free. His heart pounded as he reached the secluded garden gate. The night air was cold against his skin, the scent of damp earth heavy in the air. Beyond the gate, freedom awaited. But as he reached for the latch, a deep voice cut through the silence. You really thought I wouldn't anticipate this? Taehyung froze. Jungkook stepped from the shadows, his silk robes loose around his frame, his long hair tousled as if he had just woken. Yet his gaze was sharp, unreadable in the dim light. Taehyung clenched his fists. Step aside. Jungkook didn't move. And if I don't? Taehyung's breath came fast, his frustration mounting. You can't keep me here. I was never meant to be your husband. Jungkook's jaw tightened. You are. No, you're. Jungkook repeated, his voice low but firm. From the moment you stood in that hall and vowed yourself to me, you were mine. Taehyung let out a bitter laugh. Because of a lie, Jungkook took a step forward. Because of fate, Taehyung stiffened. Jungkook reached for him, and though Taehyung wanted to move, he couldn't. Jungkook's fingers traced his wrist, right over the spot where his pulse raced. I let you believe I was a fool, Jungkook murmured, because it was the only way to have you. The only way your family would ever allow it. Taehyung's breath caught. Jungkook's grip tightened. You think you were meant to marry your sister to me? He exhaled a quiet, humorless chuckle. No, Taehyung. It was always supposed to be you. The words settled between them, heavy and unshakable. Taehyung searched his face, looking for deception, for amusement. He found none. Why? He whispered. Jungkook's gaze softened, his fingers moving up to cup Taehyung's jaw. Because I love you, the world tilted. Taehyung shook his head, trying to make sense of it. I've always loved you. Jungkook's voice was steady, unwavering. Even before you knew me. Even before you knew yourself. Taehyung's throat tightened. Would you have agreed to this marriage if I had been honest? Jungkook asked. If you had known from the start. Taehyung opened his mouth, but no words came. Because the answer was no. He would have fought it, refused it. He would have let his pride, his stubbornness, and his fear keep him from this path. Jungkook's lips quirked slightly. Exactly, silence stretched between them, heavy and uncertain. Then, Jungkook exhaled. Run, if you must. His fingers slid away, leaving behind only warmth. But know this, wherever you go, however far you run, his dark eyes locked onto Taehyung's. I'll always find you. Taehyung's heart pounded. He should run. He should push past Jungkook and take the freedom he had fought for. But instead, he stood there, rooted to the ground, staring at the man who had ensnared him in ways he hadn't even realized. And for the first time, Taehyung wondered, did I ever truly want to escape? Jungkook took a step back, as if giving him the choice. Taehyung swallowed hard. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he reached for Jungkook's hand and laced their fingers together. Jungkook stilled, his breath hitching. Taehyung looked up, something raw and fragile in his gaze. Take me home. A slow, breathtaking smile spread across Jungkook's lips. With pleasure.